All right, guys, we are moving on to our next story. RFK Jr. is, I don't know, man, like he has people's heads spinning again in reference to another decision that he has made. Now, apparently, it appears RFK Jr. has selected someone as his running mate for vice president. You're going to see the New York Post article here, but you're also going to hear from him in reference to this choice in an interview that he just had with Chris Cuomo. So we're going to hear about that as well. And also, I think the biggest problem that people are having, or people who still support RFK Jr., is that he appears to be flip-flopping on the issues, and he's starting to look inconsistent. And that also goes into this story about Nicole Shanahan, because it was actually Whitney Webb who called it out. And, you know, Whitney is on it. Whitney is on it. She said the director of Shanahan's foundation is simultaneously part of Open Philanthropy, which financed Event 201, a pandemic simulation RFK Jr. has routinely criticized, and is mainly funded by Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskowitz. So she is referring to this announcement here from the New York Post, RFK Jr. to name wealthy attorney Nicole Shanahan as running mate in presidential run. So I'll tell you a little bit about her in just a second, right? So Whitney is, again, she's pointing out one of these inconsistencies with RFK Jr.'s beliefs versus what his campaign is supposed to be about. So Whitney Webb is a great investigative journalist. She was one of the first people, I think, that noticed this. And we'll get into who Nicole Shanahan is. Whitney Webb goes on to say, on Open Philanthropy and Event 201, Open Philanthropy was also tied to FTX scandal through SBF ties to the group via effective altruism. So she has a lot of this stuff. And it's funny because some people came after Whitney like, is there anything you like? Also, who knows if this is true? Disappointing. And Whitney said the literal sources for it being true are in the tweets. So again, you guys got to understand that Whitney Webb does her research. She's done a lot of research about Jeffrey Epstein. So she's one of the people I would say you got to be, okay, she does her research. Now, Nicole Shanahan. Nicole isn't just a wealthy attorney. She was also married to Sergey Brin, who was also a co-founder of Google. So she's in that tech bro circle. Now, apparently there was also a rumor that while she was married to Sergey, she had some type of affair with Elon Musk. This is just wild. Like, I'm like, this is Days of Our Lives or something like that. Elon Musk has denied that. She has also denied that. But she is in that tech bro Silicon Valley circle. She also donated money to RFK. She's the one that was behind that Super Bowl ad that some people liked, some people did not like. So this is someone giving the money to RFK. And it comes across as though she bought her way in, that she bought her way into being his running mate. Now, you guys know he was looking at people like Aaron Rodgers and Jesse Ventura. Not sure what happened with Jesse Ventura. I would assume the Aaron Rodgers fallout or not selecting Aaron Rodgers could be because of the smear that just came out about Aaron Rodgers from CNN, which reported that he was one of those Sandy Hook conspiracy theorists. So that could be part of the reason why they decided not to go in that direction. Not sure about Jesse Ventura, but he was actually questioned about this recently in an interview with Chris Cuomo. It says here, RFK Jr., Nicole Shanahan would absolutely be a VP contender if she were broke. So Chris Cuomo, I will say in this interview, he does actually call him out on this hypocrisy, like, you say that you're for the working class and you're not into, trying to pick people who are wealthy and all this kind of stuff, which I told you guys even back then, long time ago, I said he is a part of that class. He's in that same group of people. He may not be a billionaire, but he is a part of the socialite class because he is a Kennedy. So he has the name. And then also in reference to his net worth, he's a part of that class. Listen to this.
Let's discuss this and much more with a main player in shaping our potential future, independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me back, Chris.
So you have had a dance when it comes to saying things on Twitter or on the internet that people don't want you to say, and things being restricted or shadow banned or whatever you want. What do you think people need to understand about the state of play with where law and culture should meet on what's being called content moderation on social media?
Well, I have a case now that just won in the Court of Appeals called Biden versus Kennedy versus Biden, where I successfully sued the president for censoring, for ordering the social media sites to censor me and to deplatform me 37 hours after he took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution of the United States. President Biden had people within his White House staff contacting Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, the other social media sites, and pressuring them to remove my posts. And my posts, they said originally, well, it's because he's posting misinformation, but they were not able to point to a single post that I had posted that was actually factually erroneous, and they had to make up a new word called malinformation, which is information that is accurate but is nevertheless inconvenient to the government. And so you had the U.S. government doing something unprecedented, which is to pressure social media sites, to censor political speech.
Yeah, we're not going to go too deep into this part because they get into the whole pandemic stuff. But basically, he's saying that the Biden administration basically were pressuring social media sites to suppress or to censor his posts. This isn't new. I mean, any of us that paid attention to the Twitter files, which I talked about a lot on the show, that was revealed that this is what they had been doing all along, right? They had been censoring people. Where this is a little bit different is that this is a presidential candidate, and you should not be allowed to censor someone who's running for office, whether you agree with their positions on these issues or not. But apparently that is happening. There's also this issue of RFK Jr. Not receiving Secret Service. So that was also an issue. So we go into that a little bit as well. But the point is, I have said this multiple times before, Joe Biden is not really addressing RFK publicly. Some of these other candidates that are running against in this race are not really addressing and going after RFK publicly. It's really weird to me, considering that he is polling as high as he is as an independent candidate. I feel like a lot of people are just looking the other way as if he's not a real contender. And I do feel like that is a mistake. I don't agree. I don't agree with a lot of it used to be like 2 of his policies. I don't agree with a lot of his policies. He's not the candidate for me. I wouldn't support RFK Jr. But that being said, I think it's a mistake for people to ignore him and pretend like he's not in this race. But you don't try to beat someone by censoring their tweets. I think this is the piece I wanted to get to here.
Of course, the social media sites are going to do what they say now. Social media sites ought to be able to police their sites, to take off kiddie porn, to take off advocates of violence or racism or whatever. But once the government gets involved and tells them what to do, then, we have a First Amendment problem, and that should never happen.
All right, 2 more quick things, Bobby, while I have you. The first one is, I don't want you to jump your own announcement, but one of the names that's being bandied about, who doesn't throw footballs for the Jets, is Nicole Shanahan. And without you saying anything, you know me better than that. You'll announce it when you want to. What do you make of the obvious criticism, which is you're supposed to be a disruptor? and to say that the way the parties are doing things, specifically the Democratic Party in your case, is that it's all about money and pressure, and you're against that.
Pause. Let's look at Nicole Shanahan, right? Who is potential RFK Jr. VP pick Nicole Shanahan? She's the founder of tech law firm and philanthropic foundation. She previously married, as I told you, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, donated $4 million to pay for RFK Jr.'s Super Bowl TV commercial, and previously donated to other Democratic candidates. And that's another thing where people start to ask, how far removed from the Democratic Party is RFK Jr.? Because we've seen a couple of things happen that kind of hint to the fact that maybe he hasn't completely detached himself from the Democratic Party. And these aren't donations that she donated to the Democratic Party like 10 years ago. These were recent donations that she made. So it makes you wonder, again, I feel like she bought her way in, and that's supposed to be something that RFK Jr. would actually stand against.
The criticism is that if this person is being considered, let alone the choice, she's known to have a lot of money, and is the suggestion that you are willing to pay for an election.
There it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would never choose a vice presidential candidate based upon how much money that they have. I talked to Aaron, as you pointed out. I've talked to many, many others. We liked Aaron for some of the reasons. I talked to Nicole for some of the same reasons. They're young. Our campaign is, one of the principal priorities of our campaign is bringing young people into politics and addressing the deprivation that is now and the hopelessness that is affecting this generation.
They are young, yes. They're young rich people. They're young, but they're young rich people. We can't pretend like they're just regular, average Joe Schmoes.
Nicole, like Aaron Rodgers, has been interested in regenerative agriculture, in press freedom, in ending the chronic disease epidemic, in addressing the terrible national debt, $34 trillion again, that's hitting these young people.
Pause here. RFK Jr. shortlist for vice president: Aaron Rodgers, which I told you I think he's out, Jesse Ventura, Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul, Andrew Yang, Mike Rowe, Tony Robbins, Nicole Shanahan, and Trisha Lindsay. For whatever reason, they didn't want to show her picture. But a lot of these people are like wealthy, the point is, he said he was supposed to be the opposite of that.
So, I like both of them. And I think we just had an abundance of really great candidates that we talked to. We have now chosen somebody, and we're going to announce that next Tuesday on the 26th in Oakland. Everybody's welcome. And Chris, I personally invite you to be there, and I hope you'll come.
Why? Okay, so they are going to announce it soon. And you see what he's doing here, Chris? I personally invite you to be there, and I hope you'll come. You see this?
Appreciate it. Quick follow. Would Shanahan be in the running if she was broke?
Yes, absolutely. She has.
All right.
No, she wouldn't. You know why? Because she wouldn't be in your circle. If she was broke, and she was passionate about those issues, as RFK just said that she was, let's say she's still passionate about those issues, but she was broke, she wouldn't be in his circle. Remember, this woman was married to Google co-founder Sergey Brin. It's not like she's just someone that was working like retail, or it's not like she was a teacher, public school teacher, or anything like that.
People, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Now, I want to ask you about this photo. It's St. Patrick's Day. By the way, he wasn't Irish. But here is a lot of your family, okay, gathered around Joe Biden. And it is St. Patty's Day. They all put out messages that are all about the same thing, which is Go Joe, we support you. What does it mean when the people who know you best say Joe Biden is better than their own brother, uncle, cousin?
It means it's a repeat because they've been saying this for the longest time. They had to put the picture up there. I can't believe they did that.
Well, first of all, I'd point out, as you know, Chris, although that looks like a big crowd of people, it is a very small percentage of my family. Last July 4th, I think there was 105 people at the Cape, and many other family members are working for my campaign. Many other family members support it. The family members who are, as you know from your family, we don't always agree on things. And I'm very, very, there are many people in my family who work for the Biden administration. President Biden is an old friend of my family. I understand that many of them disagree with me on the war in Ukraine. They disagree with me on COVID, on some of the public health issues. They disagree with me on the free speech issue. So, and we can disagree with each other in a friendly way and still love each other. They look very happy in that photograph, and it's very exhilarating. It's intoxicating being in the White House, and I'm glad I played a role, I think, in facilitating that visit to the White House and bringing them all such happiness. So I'm happy about that. And I do hope that at least a couple of them took the time to talk to President Biden and ask him to provide me Secret Service protection. So that's my hope.
That's so sad. That is so sad. It's just, to me, it's crazier, right? Because we talk about the inconsistencies. So here's another one. Like I said, he can recognize the issue with the war in Ukraine, right? So recent remarks from RFK Jr. RFK Jr. says any other nation would level Gaza if attacked like Israel on October 7th. It gets worse. Listen to this part. Independent U.S. presidential candidate RFK Jr. offers staunch support for Israel in a Reuters interview, calling it a moral nation that was justly responding to Hamas provocations with its attacks on Gaza and questioning the need for a 6-week ceasefire backed by President Joe Biden. Biden has been a vocal defender of Israel since October 7th terror attack by Hamas, but he has recently pressured it to stem the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and accelerate a 6-week ceasefire, hostage release, and aid delivery. When he is asked if he supports a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, Kennedy tells Reuters, "I don't even know what that means right now." He knows exactly what it means. He goes on to say, Kennedy says that each previous ceasefire has been used by Hamas to rearm, to rebuild, and then launch another surprise attack. So what would be different this time? How the hell are they rebuilding and Gaza is pretty much demolished, right? Goes on to say here, World War I was an immoral war. It was a war of choice. We should have never gone. Israel did not choose this war, he says, comparing it to the U.S. involvement in World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Kennedy says Hamas is to blame for Gaza's destruction, for failing to embrace the two-state solution, and for firing thousands of missiles into Israeli cities like Tel Aviv. See how he's trying to blame them, right? For not accepting two-state solution. We've spoken to people on the show multiple times that they weren't offered a true two-state solution. And also, this is where more people need to push back on RFK, because I'm going to tell you right now, pay attention, folks. RFK Jr. at this point in time, not willing to call for even a temporary ceasefire. He is to the right of Joe Biden on this issue. And I wonder if that's intentional. He goes on to say here, any other nation that was adjacent to a neighboring nation that was bombing it with rockets, sending commandos over to murder its citizens, pledging itself to murder every person in that nation and annihilate it. See, he's repeating Zionist talking points. would go and level it with aerial bombardment. But Israel is a moral nation, so it didn't do that. Instead, it built an iron dome to protect itself so it would not have to go into Gaza. These are blatant lies. They have been into Gaza before October 7th. They go in to mow the lawn. This guy is a propagandist, and I'm honestly starting to wonder if he is purposely running to the right of Joe Biden on Israel. And I often wonder if RFK Jr. is going to end up backing Joe Biden. I wonder if he is going to, remember, he still has to get onto the states. Now, he's gathered signatures. We're still waiting to hear if he's actually on the ballot in those states like Arizona and Georgia, but he has reached the signature gathering, right? How you run into the right of Biden on Gaza? Again, with the inconsistency, he's not consistent. This is why I continue to tell people when people say RFK is anti-war. No, he's not. This guy is not anti-war. I don't know why people keep wanting to believe this. I think you're in love with a personality. I think you've fallen in love with the personality, and you're not paying attention to the policies in the way that he's been pivoting and the way that he's contradicted himself, whether it's in an interview, whether it's in an article, whether it's on Twitter. He tell you, give Israel everything that we need, give them the weapons that we need so they can go in. That's not anti-war. This guy is not anti-war. I'm supposed to be the pro-peace candidate. He's not pro-peace. Just because someone is right on the war in Ukraine doesn't mean they're right with the war in Gaza. And we've seen this from a number of people. We saw this from Tulsi Gabbard. We see it from RFK Jr. These people are not anti-war. I told people about Tulsi Gabbard over a year ago, and I got shouted at by a bunch of people who said, how dare you say Tulsi Gabbard is an anti-war? She is. I was right about Tulsi Gabbard. And it took until after October 7th and her tweeting out that tweet saying, we need to give Israel weapons and da-da-da. People are like, oh my God, I can't believe that Tulsi said this. She's been saying that. People just haven't been paying attention. The inconsistencies. And then there's inconsistencies here. Because when it comes to Israel, RFK Jr. tell you, give them everything that they need. But when it comes to, and he's in this discussion with Vicky Dillard, when it comes to her talking to him about cash reparations, which he is against, I want to make this very clear. He is against that. He said this multiple times on platforms. He got to come up with excuses. Listen to this. I was tagged in this right before I went live, and I said, oh, hells no.
So this resistance, last point that you have with reparations, this resistance that you have, if that isn't dealt with, you're going to run into problems in more ways than one.
Thank you, Vicky. And
so let me address a couple of things that you said. One is, I don't think my job is to do what people want me to do. I've never believed that. If that's the kind of leader that people want, then they should not vote for me. I'm going to do what I think is right. And everything I do, everything I've done throughout my career has shown that. Nobody liked when I was talking about vaccines. The majority of people just did not want that. But I talk about it anyway. I'm going to do what I think is right. And I would point out to you that during the civil rights movement, that the Jews in this country, and particularly the leadership of the Jews, were at the forefront of that movement and were embraced.
Let me pause. Everybody see the game? You're sitting at a table, you're talking to a room full of Black podcasters, and he gonna try to educate her about the civil rights movement. Notice who he chooses to bring up. She is talking to you about issues directly affecting Black people, and you choose to bring up another group of people because there were a couple of them that were involved as activists in the civil rights movement. I mean, it's just called reading the room. Let's continue.
By Martin Luther King were embraced by the other leaders of the movement. 3 Jewish boys, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, were killed in Mississippi. They died so that Black Americans could, first the Civil Rights Movement, many, many other Jews took great risks and suffered because of their sacrifices for the Civil Rights Movement.
Pause. Not as many Black people. Way more Black people suffered. Okay? Way more Black people suffered. And there were a lot of people that were part of the Civil Rights Movement, different races. But the majority of people who got their ass kicked, got dog sicked on them, or died were Black people.
In terms of genocide, I spent 20% of my career working for American Indians who suffered an equivalent genocide of probably 100 million of them were killed. And the rest of them, the remnants of those populations, confined to reservations for 500 years. And all of this land was taken from them. And that also is an original sin of our country. And I've worked on treaty negotiations. I've worked to get them and every form of reparation that I can. I've seen the limitations of some of it. I've seen, the effects of cash reparations compared to investment in infrastructure. And I've had a lot of, I've fought for that very hard. And as I said, I believe in the moral case for reparations. What I said to Jeff is that I think politically, although the lineage-based reparations constitutionally would pass muster, I think politically getting that bill through both houses of Congress would be impossible.
Pause. So here's the problem, folks. He wants to not consider cash reparations. Again, it would be based on lineage because he thinks it would be problematic trying to get it through Congress. But the question that should be asked, RFK Jr. should be asking, and he did, and I watched this. Why is it that it wasn't problematic to get it through Congress for the Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps? Governor Hochul in New York has just signed on to give reparations again for Jewish people. This is new. I'm not talking about a long time ago. This is new. Nobody stopped and said, when it's for these other groups, no one stops and says, oh my God, how are we going to get it through? Congress is probably not going to approve it. So what RFK should be asking is, why is it that would be the case when it comes to American descendants of slavery, but it wasn't the case when it came to Jewish people and when it came to Japanese Americans? And yes, Germany paid reparations, but there were also reparations that were paid by the United States as well. In fact, Marcel Dixon tried to explain this to Marianne Williamson when he was at her event in South Carolina. He tried to explain this to her that it happened under Barack Obama. And now you see it's happening under Governor Hochul in New York. And you see that the U.S. government gives $3.8 billion a year to the state of Israel. But when it comes to American descendants of slavery, all of a sudden it's, no, I don't want to do the cash reparations because Congress won't approve it. What you should be calling out, RFK Jr., is why they're willing to approve it for certain groups, but not for others. That's what you should be calling out. And for him to sit there in the room with other Black podcasters and to sit up here and to bring up 3 people that he mentioned, that he said were in the forefront of the civil rights movement, how dare you? How dare you try to center other groups in that damn discussion? This gets to be even more important when we get to the Candace Owens interview with Rabbi Barkley. This is something I want you guys to pay close attention to about who they choose to prioritize and who they do not prioritize. I'll let him finish this part here.
The only thing people will do is they'll say, let's study it. And that is just a formula for, kicking the can down the road and not doing anything. What I'm doing.
But nobody says, let's study it in reference to other groups. That is the problem. Do you guys understand? They gave Japanese Americans, they gave them $20,000 cash reparations. They gave to them and their descendants. Where was the, let's sit down and study this? They've been studying reparation bill. That bill has been in Congress forever. They've been studying it for decades. We all know a study is where a bill goes to die. There's no study being done. That's just a way for you to say you acknowledge that the bill was presented and you're actually just sending it to the side. You're not serious about it. So for all these people who are pushed forward in the forefront and all these people who say they're actively trying to do something for the Black community, notice as soon as you mention that word reparations, most of them take a step back and say, not willing to go that far, though. That includes the Black faces in high places. That includes the Kamala Harris who says we need to study it. The study was already done, Kamala. That includes the Barack Obama. That includes the Clyburns. That includes the Simone Sanders. That includes the Joy Reids. That includes the Candace Owens. That includes all those people who they say are representing the Black community. But the moment you try to start saying that Black people or American descendants of slavery should rightfully get what they are owed for free labor in this country, all of a sudden, that is a bridge too far, but it was never a bridge too far for other groups. And for him to sit up there and try to seriously center, he tried to center Jewish people in that discussion. That pissed me off. I've said it before. This guy should be running for the president of Israel. He needs to run for prime minister of Israel. He don't need to be running for president of the United States. But he is a whole ass clown. We have to be careful and make sure that these people, I told you, some of these people that are running independent and third party are not independent or totally third party. They are just as corrupt and just as much a part of the establishment and just as much in with the big bro tech people and the big donors as people running through the two-party system. And they're all going to tell you what you want to hear just to get your vote.